At the beginning of the story, we see a newly married couple whose wife's name was Julia. She had shifted to her country with her husband. Julia was American, so she did not understand the language here. Julia's husband brings her to his rented house. When Julia starts going inside, she notices that a man is watching her from the flat of the building in front. But she did not take this seriously and came to her house with her husband. The house that Julia's husband had rented had very big windows of glass. At midnight, when she stands on her window, she sees that the man was still watching her from the flat of the building in front. But she still does not take it seriously. In the morning, when Julia's husband goes to his job, now Julia goes out for a walk. This country, the people living here, everything was very different for her. Neither did she know the language here, nor did she understand anyone properly. Now when Julia comes home, her door was open. Seeing this, she was a little scared. Then the owner of the building comes out of her house, who was getting something fixed with the electrician. Julia comes inside her house. As time passed, the weather also changed. The winter had also started soon. One night, when Julia was waiting for her husband, she goes to the window while walking. She sees the man who was always looking at her window. Even now he was standing there, looking at her. She finds this very strange. She was scared of this thing in her heart and mind. After a while, her husband also came home. She now goes out for a walk with him. They both see that the ambulance is standing near the building nearby. When they go and ask people, no one tells anything. What happened there? Julia comes home and hears on TV that there is a man in the building nearby who is a very dangerous killer. He killed the girl very mercilessly. Hearing this, Julia was very scared. She now tells her husband that there is a man in the building opposite, who is always standing at her window and watching me. When her husband looks at his window, there was no one there. He tells Julia that this is just your illusion, nothing like that. The next day, her friend comes from Julia's husband's office. He was also talking about the same incident. The incident that happened near their house. He tells that the man has killed many girls. Julia was more scared after hearing her words. Because she was all around her house. The next morning, when Julia goes out to throw the garbage, she meets a girl on the way, whose name was Irina. She used to live with her house. She says that if you ever hear any noise from my house, then you have to hit something on the wall. Saying this, she left from there. Julia goes out, where a boy was following her. But he goes a little further. Julia felt that he was following her. But this was just her illusion. She goes to see a movie to cheer up, where there were only 2 or 4 people. Then she feels that someone has come and sat on the back seat of her. But she didn't have the courage to look back, so she comes out of the theater without seeing. After this, she goes to the supermarket to buy her household goods. Here too, she feels that the man who was sitting behind her in the theater is still following her. She quickly locks herself in the staff room and starts looking at her with a glass. That man was also looking for her. Quickly leaving the back door, Julia came to her house. Now, while eating dinner at night, she tells her husband all this. She says that the man who looks at me from the window, he was following me today. Hearing this, her husband takes her to the supermarket, where he checks the camera recording. Seeing which it is not known whether he was following Julia or not. Her husband tells her, "Look, you were looking at him, then he was looking at you. All this is just an illusion." But still, Julia takes the picture of that man in her phone. The next night, when Julia was waiting for her husband, she gets a call from her husband. He tells that he will not come home tonight. He has some important meeting. Julia is alone, scared, she covers the window. Because she was still scared. The man who always keeps looking at her, he must still be looking at her. She always felt someone around her. That's why someone knocks on the door. Julia now opens the door in fear. There was an old woman outside who was asking her cat in her own language. And she doesn't understand anything. Then, standing outside, Irina, who was looking at her, says that this woman is asking about her cat. And she also tells Julia to come to her house. Now she didn't have any friends, so she comes to Irina's house. While drinking a drink, when they were talking to each other, someone knocks on Irina's door loudly. She doesn't go and open the door, but she starts talking to someone standing there. Julia was looking at her, but she doesn't understand who Irina is talking to. She comes and tells her, "He was my friend, who was very angry, so I didn't open the door. He has also given me a gun to save me. It's good, but sometimes he gets angry." After a while, Julia came back to her house. When she comes and removes the curtain from the window, the man was still standing there and looking at her. Julia now shakes her hand. He also shakes her hand in return. She was very scared about this. When her husband comes home, she tells him everything. He was the same man who was following her in the market. But still her husband doesn't doubt that man. He still makes Julia understand that it is just her illusion. That's why her husband now calls the police. Hearing all this, the police tells her that, "Madam, this can only be your illusion and nothing like that." Julia's husband says that you are tired. She feels very bad after hearing this from her husband that he doesn't believe her. The next morning when Julia goes out for some work, she sees the same man who was looking at her from the window. He was going somewhere. She follows him. She followed him to a bar where Elena also worked. Julia finds out about that man that he works in this bar. When she asks Elena about that man, she says that she doesn't know anything about him. Julia now came back to her house. Sometimes she feels that someone has covered her face. Someone wants to kill her. But it was nothing like that. It was just a dream of Julia. She was so scared that she now had such thoughts and illusions. That's when she hears voices from Elena's house. She quickly goes to the owner of the building and asks Elena to open the door, because she felt that she was in trouble. When the owner of the building opens her door, there was only a cat inside that had dropped the lamp. And Julia also heard the same lamp. The owner of the building also found Julia's behavior very strange. When Julia's husband comes back, the owner of the building tells her that your wife does very strange things. Julia explains to her husband that whatever is happening around her is not her illusion but a reality. But her husband tells her to stop it. He was very upset about this. Julia was also very upset about Elena because she hadn't come home since last night. That's when she hears a voice from her door. The voice was Elena's friend. Julia comes out and asks her about Elena. She says that we had to meet today but she didn't come to meet me. And I came to her house to find out about this. Now no one is opening the door. She takes Elena's number from her and calls her. But her phone was in her house. When Elena's friend starts going from there, Julia stops him and says that I need your help. She took him to the building in front of her where the same man used to live who used to look at Julia from the window. Elena's friend tells her to open the door. But no one opens the door. That's why he left from there. Now Julia knocks on the door. Then an old man opens the door. But he was not the man who used to look at Julia all the time. Julia came back home. The man who used to look at Julia from the window, who also follows her, came to Julia's house with the police. And he says that this girl is bothering my dad. That means that old man was her dad. The police says that maybe you are mistaken. You should sit down and solve this matter. Julia asks them to shake hands. But Julia still had fear in her heart. After she left, her husband shows her the picture of the killer who was caught by the police, who killed the girl in the building near her. He tells Julia that you don't need to be afraid now. But Julia was still scared. She doesn't say anything to her husband about this now, because he didn't believe her. Julia's husband takes her to a party where everyone was talking about the killer who had been caught. Here Julia's husband tells everyone that yes, my wife is also afraid of such a killer who has no identity. He was making a kind of joke of Julia. Julia feels very bad about this. She left the party and came home. And she comes home and starts packing her clothes. She wanted to leave this country and go back to her country, because she was tired here. That's when she hears the music from Irina's house. And now she goes inside her house. So there was Irina's dead body there. Before she could tell anyone anything, someone attacks her. who was no one else but the same man Julia was scared of. Her suspicion was absolutely right. Now that man had killed Irina. Her next target was Julia, who was unconscious. After a while, when she comes to her senses, she sees the same man in front of her who had a knife in his hand. That man now tells her that your suspicion was right. When you came to Irina's house, I killed her. And I hid myself and her dead body. Saying this, he attacks Julia with a knife. That's when Julia hears her husband's voice, who had come home. When Julia's husband comes home, he sees that Julia was not at home. When he calls her, her phone was ringing from Irina's house. When he comes out of the house, he sees the same man leaving Irina's house. Seeing him, she doubts that he has surely done something wrong with Irina, but he didn't know that he had killed his wife too. Now that man was heading towards Julia's husband. Then someone shoots from Irina's house, and at the same time that man died. Actually, Julia had killed him with Irina's gun, which she kept with her for protection. Julia pretended to be dead in front of this murderer, but she was alive. She was breathing. Then Julia comes out of Irina's house, and she was on the phone, and she was looking at her husband, thinking that he was making fun of her fear. In this way, Julia had killed the real murderer, i.e. the same man on whom Julia had a doubt was killing all the girls, and why he was doing this, no one knows. So take care of everything around you. Do research on anything. Never make fun of others' fear, otherwise this incident can happen to you too, because you don't know the intentions of the people around you. And with this message, this story ends here.